The sun was setting over Ouagadougou, painting the dusty streets in golden light. President Ibrahim Traoré sat stiffly in his armored car, watching life unfold outside his window. Children kicked a torn soccer ball between market stalls. Women balanced baskets of vegetables on their heads. Old men played checkers using bottle caps as pieces. His security team hated these unannounced visits, but Ibrahim insisted. Reports can lie, he'd tell them. Eyes don't. That's when he saw the man under the mango tree. Even through the dirty windshield, something felt familiar. The way the man sat with his knees pulled to his chest, the shape of his hands, calloused and restless. Ibrahim's heart began pounding like it did during his army days. "Stop the car," he ordered. "But sir," his guard started. "Now." The street went quiet as Ibrahim stepped out. People froze mid-step, shocked to see their president in worn jeans and a simple shirt instead of his usual uniform. He walked slowly toward the tree, his polished boots crunching on peanut shells. The man looked up, squinting against the sun. His face was gaunt, his clothes threadbare. But those eyes... "Adama?" Ibrahim whispered. The man flinched like he'd been struck. "No, you're not real," he mumbled, pressing himself against the tree trunk. "Hunger's making me see things again." Ibrahim knelt in the dirt, not caring about the crowd forming around them. "It's me, Ibrahim, your brother." Recognition flickered in Adama's sunken eyes. "Ibra," he breathed, using the nickname no one had spoken since their childhood. Then came the tears, slow at first, then shaking his whole body. The president wrapped his arms around this living ghost, this shadow of the boy who'd once carried him home on his back when Ibrahim sprained his ankle stealing mangoes. In that moment, Ibrahim wasn't a leader or a soldier. He was just a man holding the last piece of his broken past. The presidential palace felt colder that night. Doctors had examined Adama, their faces grim as they listed his ailments. Worms from dirty water, lungs damaged by street pollution, scars from beatings. Ibrahim sat by his brother's bed, guilt churning in his gut. How many times had he walked these same streets as president, never guessing his own flesh and blood slept in doorways? "Remember our old game?" Adama's voice startled him. "When we'd pretend the Baobab tree was a spaceship?" Ibrahim managed a smile. "You always made me be the alien." "Because you talked funny after losing your front teeth." Adama's chuckle turned into a cough. "After Mama Aisha died, I wrote to you. 3 letters. Sent them to the army school." The words hit like a slap. "I never got them," Ibrahim whispered. Adama shrugged. "Probably got lost, or maybe they thought I was lying." He picked at the clean hospital sheet. "Didn't matter. You were becoming important. I was this." The silence between them grew heavy. Outside, an owl cried, the same sound that used to scare them as boys. At dawn, Ibrahim gathered his ministers. "We're starting a new program," he announced, "to help families find each other, missing parents, lost kids, anyone who fell through the cracks." The finance minister frowned. "Sir, the cost—" "We'll use money from the military parade budget." Ibrahim's tone left no room for argument. "If I didn't know my own brother was starving, how many others are invisible?" The plan grew quickly. Police stations became places to report missing loved ones. Schools taught kids how to make family trees. Radio hosts read names of the lost between songs. People called it the Brother Project, though its real name was longer. But Ibrahim's real work began at an old school building on the city's edge. Workers scrubbed mold from walls, while Adama pointed out changes. "Bigger windows," he insisted. "Small spaces feel like cages when you've slept rough." "You're the boss," the foreman grumbled, though everyone saw him wipe his eyes when Adama showed where to put nightlights for scared kids. Adama's recovery wasn't smooth. Some nights, He'd wake screaming about men with machetes. Other times, he'd disappear for hours, returning with street kids he'd promised to help. "This is Aisha," he'd say, introducing a silent girl with burn scars. "She's going to be a chef." Ibrahim watched his brother come alive. The hollow cheeks filled out. The trembling hands grew steady as Adama taught boys to fix bikes. But the past still haunted them both. One rainy night, Ibrahim found Adama staring at the palace gates. "They're saying I'm a fraud," Adama muttered. "That I'm using you." "Let them talk. You don't understand. When you grow up eating garbage, kindness feels like a trick." Adama's voice broke. "What if I mess up? What if I'm not good enough?" Ibrahim placed a hand on his shoulder. "You already are." The center opened during Harmattan season, dust storms painting the sky orange. Former street kids served mint tea to visitors. Adama stood stiff in his new clothes, explaining the mural where each child had painted their dreams. "This one wants to drive trucks," he said, pointing to shaky blue wheels. "This girl plans to cure malaria." Critics came, of course. Some called it a waste of money. Others spread lies about Adama stealing funds. The worst was a threat sent to Ibrahim's office, a photo of their childhood tree soaked in gasoline. That night, Ibrahim drove Adama to Kogho village. They sat under the Baobab's massive branches, its trunk still bearing their carved initials. "We could post guards," Ibrahim said. Adama shook his head. "Let the people protect it." By morning, villagers had formed a human chain around the tree. Shopkeepers brought food. School kids tied ribbons to its branches. The tree became a symbol, not just of two brothers, but of a country refusing to forget its most vulnerable. As months passed, stories emerged. A taxi driver found his sister after 20 years. A grandmother recognized her grandson's birthmark. The center's first graduate, a boy who'd lived in drains, opened a motorcycle repair shop. Adama grew into his role naturally. He wasn't a politician, but he knew how to listen. When a new boy arrived, hiding knife scars under his sleeves, Adama didn't push. He just sat nearby, whittling wood until the boy whispered, "They took my sister. We'll find her," Adama promised, and they did. 1 year later, Ibrahim stood at the back of a crowded room. Dozens of teenagers in graduation caps smiled for cameras, their families weeping with pride. Adama moved through the crowd, straightening collars and cracking jokes. "He's better at this than I am," Ibrahim told a journalist. "But you're the president." Ibrahim watched his brother lift a laughing girl onto his shoulders. Some things matter more than titles. Nowadays, you'll find Adama at the center most days. His office has no door, just a curtain made from recycled soda cans. Kids leave him drawings and strange gifts, a perfect white feather, a cassette tape of rain sounds, a mango pit that somehow sprouted on his desk. Ibrahim visits often, though he hates the attention it brings. They walk the gardens at dusk, discussing everything from plumbing issues to national policy. Sometimes they just sit, two middle-aged men watching fireflies dance where armed guards once stood. "Remember when we thought leadership meant giving orders?" Ibrahim asked recently. Adama grinned. "Turns out it's mostly fixing what's broken." The story spread far beyond Burkina Faso. An artist in Brazil painted their embrace under the mango tree. A school in India started its own Brother Project. But the truest legacy lives in quieter moments. A reunited mother singing her son to sleep. A former thief teaching kids to read, the way villagers still protect that ancient baobab. As for the brothers, they still argue about stupid things. Adama hates Ibrahim's coffee. Ibrahim teases Adama's terrible singing. But every full moon, they meet under their tree. No guards, no speeches, just two boys from Kogho, now old men, reminding each other of promises made under stars. "We did okay, Adama said last month, patting the Baobab's roots. Ibrahim smiled. We're not done yet. In a world obsessed with fame and power, their story whispers a different truth. That real change begins not with grand plans, but with seeing each other. Not as projects or problems, but as people. A president remembered his brother. A brother remembered his worth. And a nation remembered that its strength lies not in wealth or weapons, but in the bonds between its people. So if you take anything from this story, let it be this. Look around. Who in your life needs to be seen? Who's hiding in the shadows of shame or regret? Reach out, not with pity, but with the simple words Adama still uses with every new face at the center. I'm here. Let's begin.